Hello everyone, back again with movie and tune recap. Today, I'm going to explain a Canadian slasher film from 2024, titled Butcher's Book 2, Raghorn. Spoilers ahead, so watch out and take care. The movie opens with a girl, covered in blood and injuries, running away from a monster in the woods. Thinking she has lost sight of it, the monster captures and crushes her head, leading to her demise. The monster, known as Crusher, takes her corpse to a shack where he and his cannibalistic brother, Clyde, chop up human remains. Clyde orders Crusher to dismember the lady's body, and they later cook and eat it. We then meet a group of kidnappers, Sarah, her cousin Josh, Brian, and Eric, driving to an isolated area with their latest victim, a wealthy businessman's daughter they kidnapped for ransom. On their way, they run low on fuel and decide to stop at a gas station. While filling up, Eric and Brian notice Sarah and Josh, who have just came out from the store, conversing with Sheriff Hill, a cop, and Brian brings out his gun, in case the cop tries anything funny. As the group embarks on their way, Brian demands to know what they talked about with the cop, but Sarah says it's nothing serious. He becomes angry when Eric and Josh ask him where they are going, as he is the only one who knows their destination, and he engages in a serious argument with Josh. During the argument, an elk suddenly appeared on the road, and the group crashed into it. Sarah, Josh, and Eric survived, but Brian was impaled by one of the elk's horns. The others tried to pull the horn out of Brian's stomach, but it wouldn't budge. As they struggled to free him, the elk miraculously came back to life, and Brian shot it. Eric, frustrated and impatient, threatens Brian with a gun, demanding to know their destination. When Brian refused to answer, Eric shot him in the head, leaving the others in a state of panic. As the group tried to figure out what to do next, they noticed a car approaching from the distance. Sarah decides to call for help, hoping to get them out of the chaotic situation. After being told what happened, Randy, the car owner, decides to take Sarah and Josh to the gas station, and Eric decides to stay behind. Josh tried to warn Randy to leave, but Eric shot him in the chest. Before Eric could finish him off, Josh attacked him, and Randy escaped in his car, injured. With no other option, the gang decides to move away from the road, taking their captive, Ashley, who was bound and gagged in the car trunk. As they ventured into the forest, Clyde, who watched them from a distance, head back to his shack and informed Crusher to prepare the shackles, announcing that they had unexpected visitors. Meanwhile, Randy, severely injured, struggled to drive back to the gas station but ultimately succumbed to his wounds and died. Shortly thereafter, a local resident, Wilbur, found Randy's body on the roadside, took some cash from his wallet, and left. Wilbur then returned to the gas station, informed the cop about what he had seen, and provided the address. As the group journeys through the forest, Ashley, who is barefoot, accidentally injures her foot on a sharp stone. Josh, being the kind and caring person he is, comes to her aid and bandages her wounded foot. However, what they fail to notice is that Crusher is secretly following them, lurking in the shadows. Meanwhile, Eric, who has his own hidden agenda, reveals his true intentions. He decides to collect the ransom all to himself and begins bossing Josh and Sarah around. As he attempts to shoot Josh, Eric gets shot in the neck by Clyde from behind. Sarah thanks Clyde and tries to fabricate the story, but Clyde saw through her lies and holds them as his captives. He instructs them to leave Ashley behind before taking them to the shack. Left alone in the forest, Ashley begins to wander about, but Crusher gets to her and renders Ashley unconscious before taking her back to the shack. Meanwhile, Clyde takes Sarah and Josh to where Crusher has placed the shackles, and instructs them to bind their ankles and wrists. He then takes them back to the crash site and hands Josh a butcher knife, instructing him to decapitate the elk. After Josh completes the task, Sarah assists him, and they finally manage to extract the horn from Brian's stomach. They head back into the forest, with Josh carrying the elk's head. Eventually, they arrive at the shack, where they meet Crusher, and Clyde directs Josh on where to store the elk's head before taking Sarah inside. After putting the elk's head in the storeroom, Josh is knocked unconscious by Crusher on their way back to the house. Inside, Sarah tries to negotiate with Clyde to let her and Josh go and keep Ashley with him, since she's worth a lot of money, but Clyde refuses. He offers Sarah a drink, which she declines, suspecting it might be poisoned. Clyde outsmarts her, slamming her face into the table, and then threatens her with his rifle, forcing her to take the drink hastily. As Clyde turns to put the juice in the fridge, Sarah sees his gun and attempts to shoot him, only to discover it's out of ammunition, which Clyde reveals he had run out of a while ago. Clyde threatens Sarah with a gun, demanding she return his rifle before she succumbs to the effects of the drug drink and pass out. Next, Clyde meets with Ashley, removes the sack from her head, and instructs Crusher to take her to the store and chain her up. Meanwhile, Sheriff Hill arrives at the crash site and is met with a grisly scene. He notices bloody footprints and decides to call for backup before following the trail. Back at the shack, Clyde instructs Crusher to take Josh into the house and tie him up. Sarah regains consciousness to find herself tied to a tree, stripped of her clothes, with a sack over her head, and her body parts marked. Clyde sets up a recording camera, and when Sarah asks him why he's doing this, he reveals that he has no particular reason. He then begins to cut Sarah's body, causing her to scream in pain. Ashley, who hears Sarah's screams, decides to set herself free. After finishing with Sarah, Clyde moves on to Josh, who is now conscious. When Josh asks about Sarah's whereabouts, Clyde reveals what he has done to her, and then orders Crusher to fetch a muzzle. The muzzle is placed over Josh's mouth, and Clyde warns him if he doesn't remain calm, Crusher will snap his neck. The muzzle is intended to prevent Josh from screaming or making any noise, leaving him helpless and silenced. He sets up the camera again and begins torturing Josh by cutting his genital, with Crusher present. Meanwhile, Ashley managed to untie herself and break the shackles on her leg. She then storms out of the store, where she comes across Sarah's lifeless body. Overcome with determination, Ashley decides to head back to the house, grabs a shotgun, and reloads it with bullets. She also takes extra ammunition along with her. After mutilating Josh, Clyde attempts to end his life, but Ashley intervenes just in time and shoots Crusher dead. She then orders Clyde to free Josh and bind himself with the shackles. However, Josh managed to land a punch on Clyde's face before restraining him. The trio leaves the shack, and to Josh's surprise, Sarah isn't dead, though severely injured. After bringing Sarah down, she dresses up, and Ashley takes all of them to the forest to show her the way out. On their way, Clyde begins singing maniacally and launches a surprise attack on Josh, killing him. Sarah urges Ashley to shoot Clyde, but Ashley is too hesitant. Sarah then takes the gun from Ashley and shoots Clyde herself. However, driven by her greed for money, Sarah decides to hold Ashley captive. Just in time, Sheriff Hill arrives and shoots Sarah dead, saving Ashley from her clutches. Sheriff Hill, now aware that Ashley is the kidnapped girl, persuades her to show him Crusher's body, which is back at the shack. Initially hesitant, Ashley reluctantly leads Sheriff Hill to the shack, but to their horror, Crusher's body is nowhere to be found. Panicked, Sarah warns Hill that they're all going to die, but he ignores her warning, and cuffs Ashley to a chair before going to look for Crusher. However, Crusher ambushes him, crushes his head, and then proceeds to dismember his body. Meanwhile, Ashley escapes by rubbing blood on her hand, slipping out of the handcuffs. She then harms herself with a knife but encounters Clyde, who surprisingly isn't dead, holding a shotgun. Clyde attempts to shoot Ashley, but she dodged the bullet and hacks his head with the knife, killing him. Crusher bursts in, but Ashley managed to shoot him in the leg, before escaping from the shack. Meanwhile, Crusher recovers and pursues Ashley through the woods, but his injury hinders his ability to catch up. Ashley spots a group of policemen and alerts them. Crusher, realizing he's outnumbered, decides to retreat, abandoning his pursuit. Ashley is finally rescued, and the movie concludes with a swarm of police officers investigating the shack. Crusher, watching from a distance, decides to flee the scene, disappearing into the woods as the authorities close in. Okay guys, that's all the recap about Butcher's Book 2, Raghorn from 2024. Thanks for watching, see you again in the next video.